Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be taking a vintage, outdated dresser and we're going to be turning it into an industrial style kitchen island. Let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I did was remove all the parts that weren't necessary. So I took the top piece off so that we would have a nice smooth work surface for our island. And then I started taking out the top shelf. Since we'll no longer need that, we're going to build a shelf on top of the bottom drawer, and we're only going to have the one drawer. And you'll just want to be careful when you're taking all this stuff out that you don't break anything or crack any of the wood that you're going to keep. So now to get our overall height of 36 inches, which is a standard height for kitchen islands, I measured out from the top down, and we're going to be putting 5-inch metal casters on this. So I had to take that into account for my overall finished height from the top of the island to the bottom of the wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and take a circular saw and cut these down. So I started out with this guide that I screwed on so I could cut a straight line across. It turned out it didn't work out as I had planned, so I ended up just ditching it then. And I just ended up eyeballing it, which worked well. Now I went ahead and just did a little sanding on the bottom, got any of the rough edges off, evened it out a little bit. And I went over some of the other pieces as well. And just kind of gave the whole thing a scuff sanding then as well to make the paint stick a little bit better. You just want to make sure you get everything smoothed out so when you fill it in and end up painting over it, you have a nice smooth surface. went ahead and just got majority of the finish off the top, got it down to raw wood as much as I could. I ended up doing a final sanding then a little bit later, after I was done painting and everything like that, but I just wanted to get the majority of that finish off and get it prepped as good as I could for at this point in time. I went ahead and just used a piece of 220 grit sandpaper and went with the grains on the top to try to get out any of the little swirls that the orbital sander left in the top. So it helps if you just take a piece of sandpaper and go with the grain, and it helps smooth it out a little bit. I went ahead and filled in the holes with wood putty. I prefer using the Bondo wood putty if possible. I just didn't have any on hand, but that tends to not shrink as much and it dries a lot quicker, and it just seems like a harder substance after it hardens up. But this is what I had on hand and it turned out working okay. So now that our wood putty dried, I'm going to go ahead and sand those down and finish off those spots. I'm just going to finish up the scuff sanding all of the sides and all the pieces to help the paint stick better when we are ready to paint it. I just like to tape off the underside of the top just so when I'm painting the rest of the body of it that I don't get paint all over the underneath of the top. It tends to just look cleaner. And now I'm going to measure for the shelves. I'm going to get the overall measurements, see what fits. And you want to make sure you dry fit them in there. Just make sure that everything fits the way you want it to before you glue and nail them fast. Obviously, once you start, you won't be able to turn around at that point. So I had already dry fitted them and made sure everything looked the way I wanted it to before I attached them. So after I had them in place with the glue, I went back and just drove a few screws up through the bottom to make sure they didn't move. I went ahead and just did a quick sanding over them just to make sure I got all the splinters and dirt off of them, because we're going to end up painting these as well as the rest of the body. And for this I used Fusion Mineral Paints Limestone. So it's a white, but it's a little bit more yellowy creamish in color. So painting is not my thing. I don't like the painting part. That's usually what Heather does, but for this one I had to do it myself. You'll just have to use your own judgment on the piece that you're doing, on how many coats you're going to need. This one actually took 3 coats by the time it was all said and done. Sometimes you can get away with 2 coats though, and it covers well. Alright, now that I have all 3 coats on and it's fully dried, I took the palm sander to it to get a nice, fairly heavy distressing on it. You can also do it by hand 100%, and sometimes we do, but the palm sander really gets down to business quick, and if you know how to kind of put the right pressure on and things like that, you can get a nice distressing on with the palm sander. I know a lot of times when I'm done with the orbital sander, I'll go back over with a piece of light grit sandpaper, usually 220 or higher, and just kind of hit some of the spots again and even them out. Alright, now that I'm done distressing, I flipped it over and I have my casters that I'm going to put on. First I sit them on and get the placement I want, and I marked the spots I need to drill with a pen. And you want to make sure, if you're going to be attaching them to kind of thinner wood like this, you want to make sure you pre-drill so you don't split out the wood when you screw into it. And now I just used some wood screws with washers on, because the holes on the casters are a little bit big, so you need to make sure you use like a washer or something like that to give it a little extra width to hold it down. Now if you're doing something heavy duty, you want to make sure you're using lag bolts or something bigger. For a smaller island like this, the wood screws should hold just fine. Alright, now to finish off the top, I'm using hemp oil, also by Fusion Mineral Paint. This just gives it a nice finish. It really soaks into the wood nicely. And it's also food safe. So if you're using it on top of an island or a butcher block or something like that, it's food safe as well. Now here I just took some furniture wax and waxed up the runners for the drawer, so the drawer slides in a lot smoother. It was just a little bit tight before, so this really helps it to slide in and out better. And I thought these cup handles from D. Lawless looked really nice on this. They're a nice kind of pewter finish to them, so it kind of goes along with the other metals we're adding to this and gives it that little bit of industrial look to it. And now I'm going to add a towel rack. This is the right size for a paper towel roll if you want to put one on. But you can also just hang some tea towels or hand towels over it as well. And that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you like the transformation. I think it turned out really cool. A little bit of industrial look to it, a little bit cottagey too. But if you guys liked it, please let us know. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And with that, we'll see you next time.